There are moments in a woman's life when she looks back and realizes that the man she once saw as ordinary was never ordinary at all. He was the one who carried a quiet strength, the one whose presence steadied her even when she did not notice. At the time, she thought he would always be there, that his patience and loyalty would never run dry. She took his consistency as something guaranteed, like the sunrise each morning. But now, with distance and silence between them, she begins to feel the sharpness of his absence. And suddenly, the married man she once underestimated becomes the one she cannot forget. This is not simply about desire. It is about psychology, about the way the human mind reshapes memory and emotion once something is lost. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious carries within it truths we often ignore until life forces them to the surface. For a woman, that truth often appears only after she has overlooked a man who once gave her stability, devotion, and a reflection of what she truly needed. At first, the married man may not have seemed special. He may have been gentle instead of flashy, dependable instead of dramatic. Perhaps she thought his steadiness was boring. Perhaps she compared him to men who brought sparks but never light. In those moments, she could not see that the quiet flame of consistency is what sustains love long after passion fades. Only when that flame goes out, does she realize how much warmth it gave. Memory plays a cruel trick. When she looks back, her mind does not recall the ordinary arguments or the little disappointments. It magnifies the moments when he understood her without words, when he shielded her from the storms of life, when he stood by her even as she tested his patience. In the silence of his absence, those memories echo louder than any present distraction. There is also a deeper layer. Jung wrote about the anima and animus, the inner feminine within men and the inner masculine within women. A married man often awakens the animus inside a woman because he carries a symbol of commitment, of chosen stability, of being anchored. Even if she once dismissed him, her unconscious registers that energy, and once she loses access to it, she feels ungrounded. The man becomes unforgettable, not only for who he was, but for what he represented in her psyche. This explains why so many women suddenly miss the man they once took for granted. They believed his devotion would never falter, that his role as a husband or partner made him unshakable. They assumed his patience had no limits. But when he finally withdraws, whether through distance, separation, or emotional silence, he forces her to confront a void she never expected. And in that void, longing grows. She starts to notice it in small ways. She compares new encounters to him and finds them lacking. She remembers how his voice carried calm even in tension. She recalls the way his hands held responsibility, how his choices were not reckless but steady. Each recollection becomes a thread, weaving together a picture of a man she once overlooked. That picture haunts her because it is no longer within reach. There is an irony here. While she once felt free to dismiss him, now she feels chained by his memory. Jung would call this a shadow dynamic, the part of ourselves we repress only to be ruled by it later. By ignoring his value, she repressed her recognition of what truly mattered to her. Now that he is gone, that truth bursts forth from the shadow, demanding attention. And so she dreams of him, not always in literal dreams, but in daydreams, in sudden waves of nostalgia, in the ache that surfaces when she sees another woman with a man who carries the same energy. The married man becomes not just a memory, but a symbol. He represents the stability, loyalty, and devotion she longs for. Even if she once claimed not to need them, in her longing, she begins to reconstruct him. She polishes away his flaws in her memory, holding on to the best parts while forgetting the imperfections. This is the mind's way of elevating what has been lost into something sacred. The man she once took for granted now lives as an archetype, devoted protector, the grounded partner, the one who could have been her safe harbor. And because archetypes are larger than life, she cannot forget him. This transformation reveals a painful truth. Sometimes we only recognize the depth of love after it is no longer available. Women often miss the married man most intensely when he is no longer within reach. If he has moved on, if he has closed the door, if his patience has finally ended. That is when his presence looms the largest in her heart. His absence becomes more powerful than his presence ever was. Why does this happen? Because the human psyche craves certainty and stability, yet often undervalues them until they disappear. Jung observed that people are drawn to intensity and chaos, only to realize later that it leaves them unfulfilled. A married man, with his devotion and constancy, embodies the very qualities that sustain true connection. When those qualities vanish, the contrast is unbearable. She begins to replay their moments together, dissecting each one for clues. Did he ever feel as deeply as she does now? Did he ever sense that she would one day miss him? The questions torment her, not because of their answers, but because they highlight the finality of what has been lost. Regret seeps in, and regret has a way of magnifying memory. Sometimes she even sees him in the lives of others. She notices couples walking hand in hand, and it stirs the echo of how he once held her. She watches him from afar, maybe with his wife or with his family, and feels a pang that cuts deeper than she expected. The life she once overlooked now looks like the life he secretly craves. This is the paradox of the heart. It can miss what it once dismissed, and the deeper the dismissal, the sharper the longing becomes. A man who was taken for granted often becomes unforgettable, precisely because he represented everything she thought she could live without, until she realized she could not. Jung would remind us that this is not just about one man, it is about what he symbolizes. To forget him would mean to forget the part of herself that longs for stability, loyalty, and safety. And so her psyche refuses to release him. The man becomes more than a memory. He becomes a mirror of her deepest needs. In this way, the married man she once took for granted becomes unforgettable. He lives not only in her past but in her unconscious, woven into her sense of what love truly means. And until she reconciles with that truth, he will remain, haunting her in silence, shaping her choices, and reminding her of the one lesson she learned too late, that the most precious things are often invisible until they are gone. Before we continue, if you've ever missed someone only after they were gone, the Jung Method can help you understand why. It shows the hidden patterns in love and how to protect your heart while staying true to yourself. The link is pinned in the first comment. Memory is a sculptor, and when it loses someone, it carves them into something larger than life. For a woman who overlooked a married man, this sculpting becomes relentless. She begins to reshape his presence into the very image of what she believes she needed all along. His laughter becomes brighter in her mind, his patience deeper, his care almost saint-like. And while this idealization may not be fully accurate, it becomes emotionally true for her, because it reflects the absence she feels in the present. This is one of the cruelest workings of the psyche, to exaggerate what is lost until it feels irreplaceable. Carl Jung often pointed to the way archetypes emerge when the unconscious is forced to compensate for what the conscious rejected. Here, the married man shifts from a simple partner into an archetype of devotion, loyalty, and masculine grounding. The more she replays him in her mind, the more he transcends his individuality and becomes a symbol. But symbols carry power, and the power of this memory is that it begins to shape her choices in the present. She may seek out other men, but unconsciously, she is comparing them to the one she lost. She measures their words against his steadiness, their gestures against his reliability, their affection against the loyalty she once dismissed. No one quite measures up, because she is not really searching for a new man, she is searching for the shadow of the one she cannot forget. This is why many women, even after years, still speak about the one man they lost, as if he were yesterday's memory. Time does not fully dissolve him, because he is no longer just a man. He has become a mirror of her inner world. He embodies the lesson she carries, the regret she cannot erase, the truth she cannot ignore. The pain intensifies when she realizes that he may never return. Perhaps he has built a life elsewhere. Perhaps he has learned to guard his heart. Perhaps his patience is no longer available. And yet, his absence remains a presence. The mind replays what the heart refuses to release, and so she feels caught in a paradox, unable to move forward, yet unable to bring him back. This paradox is deeply Jung taught that what we repress does not disappear. It returns in dreams, in projections, in obsessions. When she overlooked him, she repressed her recognition of his value. Now that repression erupts as longing. She projects him onto others. She dreams of him in fragments. She obsesses over the smallest memories. He is gone, but he is everywhere. Even when she tries to silence the thoughts, they return in moments of vulnerability. A certain scent, a familiar melody, a place they once shared. These become portals through which his presence floods back into her awareness. She may smile at the memory, but beneath that smile is a wound that never fully closed. And so the cycle continues. She moves forward, but he lingers in the background of her life. She loves again, but he remains a silent measure of what love once meant. She grows older, yet the younger version of herself who dismissed him continues to whisper regret into her heart. The psyche does not let go until it has been fully acknowledged. Jung would argue that the way out of this cycle is integration. To integrate is to face the truth. She overlooked him. She took him for granted. She lost him. To integrate is to accept that the married man she cannot forget is not only a part of her past, but a reflection of her inner needs. He is not just an external figure. He is the embodiment of what she values but did not claim. Until she accepts this, she will continue to be haunted by him. There is a strange kind of power in this pain. Many women describe it as the moment they truly awaken. They begin to see love differently, not as fireworks, but as a fire that warms through storms. They begin to understand that devotion is rare, that loyalty is precious, that presence is a gift. The married man becomes unforgettable not because of his perfection, but because of the lesson he left behind. And yet, that lesson is heavy. To learn it too late means to live with the ache of what if. What if she had valued him sooner? What if she had seen his steadiness as strength instead of boredom? What if she had chosen him, not after his absence, but while his presence was still hers to hold? These questions echo, and each echo makes the memory sharper. This is why some women never truly release the one man they took for granted. He becomes woven into the fabric of their identity. He shapes how they love, how they trust, how they long. And though life goes on, though new relationships arrive, though time passes, he remains there, an indelible mark on the soul. For Jung, this is the work of the unconscious. What is not lived consciously is carried unconsciously. If she did not consciously value him, her unconscious will hold on to him until the lesson is absorbed. And so the married man she cannot forget is not just a story about love, it is a story about consciousness, regret, and awakening. He becomes the silent teacher she never asked for but cannot ignore. His absence educates her heart in ways his presence never could. And though it is painful, it is also transformative. For sometimes, the greatest awakening comes not from what we have, but from what we lose. In the end, the unforgettable man is not unforgettable because of romance alone. He is unforgettable because he represents a turning point, a reckoning, a truth revealed too late. He is the mirror she cannot look away from, because in him she sees not only what she lost, but who she might have been if she had chosen differently. And that is why, for so many women, a married man once taken for granted becomes the man they can never forget. What makes this longing so difficult to release is that it becomes part of her identity. She no longer only remembers him as a man she once knew, she remembers him as a turning point in her life. Before him, she thought love could be taken for granted, that loyalty had no end. After him, she realized that even the strongest devotion can collapse when it is neglected. He becomes the dividing line between who she was before and who she became after. This transformation can be painful, but it also carries hidden wisdom. Jung often wrote that suffering forces us to meet parts of ourselves we would rather ignore. In missing the married man she once dismissed, she is not only longing for him, she is confronting her own blindness, her own unconscious patterns, her own shadow. The ache is not only about losing him, but about recognizing the self she lost by not choosing him. Over time, she may learn to carry this memory differently. Instead of resisting it, she begins to see it as a guide. She notices when she undervalues the loyalty of someone new. She catches herself when she chases excitement at the cost of stability. She remembers that devotion is not weakness, but strength. And though the married man will remain unforgettable, he also becomes a teacher through absence. In this way, her longing transforms into clarity. She cannot undo the past, but she can honor the lesson. She can live differently, love differently, and refuse to repeat the same blindness. And perhaps that is the final paradox. The man she cannot forget is not only a source of pain, but also the catalyst for her awakening.